Hi, everybody, and welcome to our latest webinar. Today, we're joined by Patrick Quinn-Paquet, who is a Senior Technical Product Manager in our compliance team. Today, we're going to be discussing whether your labs are audit ready. And with Patrick's level of experience and knowledge around this topic, I'm hoping that some of the questions that we're going to be asking him today will give you some really good insight on whether you, as a customer, are audit ready when it comes to LCMS data and record keeping. Okay, welcome, Patrick. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
The questions that we're going to be asking today are questions that we kind of come across from our customers on a regular basis. So I'm hoping that they're really going to strike a chord with the customers watching this video. And I want to kick it off with the first one. So the first question is, how do SCIEX qualification services ensure that our customer systems are producing reliable data and demonstrate this to regulators when inspected?
The SCIEX qualification services offer installation qualification, operational qualification with all the instrument that we're servicing, and also with the LC system that we're doing. So whenever you get a new instrument and you purchase our services, we'll have the documentation evidence with all the screenshot and proof that the system is operating to the vendor specification.
Okay, that's great. I mean, if I could just elaborate on that. So in terms of documentation, what could a customer expect at the end of a validation? I mean, I've experienced this process personally, but for some of our customers that might not have experienced SCIEX qualification services, I know it's quite a comprehensive document. So, I mean, if you can just kind of give us a little bit more information on what that documentation would look like in terms of final presented package to the customer.
You will end up with a printed document with objective evidence all printed and the results written by the engineer that's executed on time on that day. And then it's for the customer to review, and they have like paper evidence that everything has been completed.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, next question. How can our customers comply with regulatory requirements and retention of raw data?
So the raw data regulation requires, and it's different from customers to customers and regulatory agency in the world, but typically we'll say it's for the duration of the study and as long as the study can be audited. So this could be a few years to many years. And now we're even hearing that people want to keep the data for 30 plus years. So now that we have electronic data, the challenge is how do we keep it in a system and how can we ensure that we're reading it also? And one regarding a pretty recent announcement that analysts have an end of life at SCIEX, this brings the question to what do I do with my analyst data in the future? So what we recommend is, I mean, the best way to go is to virtualize the system. So once you're going to start retiring your analysts, you can keep one of your analysts' workstation in a virtual environment, and that will allow you to read the data in the future as long as you can maintain this virtual environment.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, so the next question is, how does the SCIEX validation service ensure clear segregation of duties among personnel in the lab?
When we do the software validation, we do validate roles, different roles for your users to use in your software validation. So meaning if it's an analyst software, SCIEX OS software, you're going to have clear roles and clear definition of what roles can do what. So you will have an administrator that obviously can manage security, manage the audit trail, and do all the configuration. And then you're going to have an operator user and a method developer user that can create methods, and the operator will be the one who will run a method. And we also have a reviewer role that can read the data without modifying it. And in SCIEX OS, they can also review and approve the data.
That's excellent, because I know data integrity is one of the key things when it comes to audit compliance. And I know from my personal experience when I was working out in the field that, setting up those user profiles and also the audit trails that go along with those as well. So you can see what changes were made, by who, and what the justification reason was for those changes to be made. So it makes it really kind of robust. And I guess that's one thing that customers really rely on in terms of security and data integrity. Another interesting question that I get asked all the time, and it's always a very subjective question, is when should customers revalidate their software?
So this one is like, you have to be in control of your software. So meaning if there's no changes, then there's no need to revalidate. And in the end of these days, I mean, in 15 years ago, there were tons of hot fixes and releases, like almost monthly. Now with SCIEX OS, we're, I'd say on average of 2 versions a year. But that means, let's say right now we're in version 4.0 and we just had a hotfix release for hotfix 1 to fix some issues with a specific instrument. If you don't need that change, if you don't need that hotfix, then there's no need to revalidate. But anytime you make a change to your software, you do have to evaluate the changes. So those can be followed by your own internal change control process. And sometimes you're going to evaluate the change and say there's nothing to be done. And sometimes you might say, let's rerun one of the test case because we made some modification. So you can have maintenance done to the software, like adding users, removing users. That might not require revalidation. But if you're deciding that now your meta developer can make a different, you're adding a role or you're adding modifying the role, then this in that case will require change control at least. And if you validated version 4.0 and now next year, let's say 5.0 comes out, then this would require revalidation of the software.
And again, that leads into another topic as well. So I know that now that we're seeing that 6-month cadence of software release within the SCIEX OS environment, and to give our customers the best opportunity to take advantage of those updates in the software, we introduced a change control contract for this exact reason. So in terms of that change control contract, can you kind of share a little bit of information on how that works and how the customer benefits from that add-on service that SCIEX now provide to our customers?
Yeah, that's a good question. The software validation is quite costly, as we know. And the change control contract was introduced to make sure that you can stay up to the latest version. So, for example, if you were validated on 4.0 and this hotfix came out and you have the change control contract, then the service to revalidate and evaluate the changes will be included in your change control contract. And this is a yearly contract that you can have on all your systems, and anytime there's a change, you evaluate the change. If you want it, then we're going to redo the validation or update the validation for you.
So it makes it a really cost-effective way for customers to stay validated while still taking advantage of the latest versions of software.
Yeah.
Because I know we see it quite often where customers don't take software updates because of that restriction on validation. And they can get kind of 2, 3, and sometimes even 4 versions behind the latest software. And some of those new releases might not be apparent as big benefits to them. But if we can take away the burden of that revalidation process, I think the introduction of that product was a really good move. And I think that we should see more customers taking up that change control contract in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the next one. This is a controversial question. So, will software validation ensure that our lab is 21 CFR Part 11 compliant?
Yeah, so this question comes from time to time, and it's not just Part 11. It could be Annex 11 or any regulation in your own country, meaning, is software validation enough to say we're compliant? And the short answer is no. We have the tools, the audit trail, security to make you compliant, but You also have to have the internal quality management system. So meaning you need to have SOPs and training on your employees on how to use the software and all the quality procedures around it. So in order to be compliant, you need three things. Like you need the tools in the software validation to cover it. And then you need your SOPs to dictate how to use the software, and your employees needs to have the training on how to use it in a compliant environment.
Yeah, and again, I think that's a great point. It's always, the term compliant is such a general use term that sometimes it's not really clear what being compliant is. And the points that you just touched on there, the training, the software being set up correctly for the user environment, and the SOPs, they're all things that SCIEX support our customers with. We can provide training, we can definitely provide those validation services and that system setup in terms of user roles that you mentioned earlier in the questions. But also with the SOP stuff, we now offer various professional services where we work much closer with our customers on providing those additional services that have not always been available in the past. So, it's quite good that SCIEX provide a complete holistic approach to that compliance environment. Okay, so moving on to the next one. How often should I requalify my instrument? So from a customer's perspective, how often should they be looking at requalifying the system? So we're talking about instrument qualification now, not necessarily the software validation element.
So this again goes a little bit like this software validation, like meaning if there's no changes to your system, then there's no need for requalification. But if there's any kind of major repair or relocation, or you might have your own procedure that says maybe you're going to have a yearly requalification required, that's what will dictate when it needs to be done. When we do service the instrument, we do have recommendation on what would trigger a requalification, but typically we would recommend at least annually to make sure that your instrument or LC is working as expected.
Okay, thank you. And again, I think customers' SOPs tend to kind of dictate when the requalifications should be done. And like you said, routinely, we recommend annually, normally after the preventative maintenance visit, so we know the instrument's on peak performance. But then I know that SCIEX also provide a list of what we consider to be major repairs. So from a compliance perspective, there's certain things that could change the characteristics of an instrument. So for example, some electronic circuit boards being replaced or turbo pumps being replaced, which could kind of affect the vacuum slightly, which ultimately could affect the results. So there are certain things that we identify as major repairs, and I'm pretty sure that list of major interventions is listed on our website. But if it's not, if anybody does need that information, then just reach out to your local SCIEX representative and they'll be able to get you that information. You mentioned earlier about the cost of validation services, and that leads kind of into the next question I've got. So our qualification and validation services are seen as expensive sometimes. And, when we talk about validation specifically, we have a pricing model where it's first in family and then second, third, and fourth in family, which is a reduced cost. And we're able to do that because a lot of the work involved in that first in family instrument is repetitive in terms of the repeat instruments. But what alternative options do we offer in terms of validation? Because I know we offer the full turnkey solution where SCIEX come in and kind of do all of that work, but I know there are a couple of other options as well. But also, it's kind of a double-edged question for you. This is, can you kind of give some context on what the cost of non-compliance could be, as well as a mitigating factor for that? So we always talk about what the cost of the solution is, but if a customer runs into problems for non-compliance, what could the financial impact of that be as well? So it's a two-part question. First is, what options does SCIEX offer customers in terms of qualification and validation services, in terms of tier of delivery? And then what are the financial penalties that customers could face for non-compliance?
Yeah, so we offer, like you said, different levels of software validation or compliance services. The one that's the most popular is what we call the standard validation. meaning we're going to deliver a set of GAMP5 documents, which include like a validation plan, a test plan, traceability requirements, design document, and all the IQOQ, PQ documents. And we can execute it for you either on site or remotely, as long as we have access to your system. And that does not mean we have to access directly to the system. We have other ways we can access, obviously working with your own IT. We have one level higher than that is if you need to have your own custom scripts or you have custom requirements, we can come up and work with your quality team and modify their standard documents to add your additional requirements. Also, we have what we call the essential validation. This validation, it's mainly done for groups that are very familiar with their own validation internally, and they just want the scripts to be able to run by themselves. So we can offer that. And all three levels of services, we offer also a documents only. So if you're familiar with the software and you just want to run the scripts yourself, this is one way to save some money. And about the cost of non-compliance. So like the risk that you have if something is found in the future, once your study is completely done and then an auditor comes and finds non-compliance, this could invalidate all your records for that study. So now you're thinking about maybe your study was done like 2-3 years ago, maybe even more. And now this would mean maybe you have to repeat your analysis, assuming you still have samples. You might have to revalidate your method. Or it might mean that now instead of being first on the market, you're third on the market with your new drug. So the costs, like even if it seems a lot at the start, it's a cheaper cost as a long term to make sure that your procedures and your software is operating accordingly with the regulation, and it just ensures that your future will you'll be compliant.
Yeah. Couple of points I'd like to make. So the first part of the question about the cost, the last thing you mentioned was the document only option, and I've seen firsthand from a salesperson's perspective and also from a delivery perspective that some customers choose the lowest cost option, which is the document only package. They go away for 6 months with a very heavy ring binder full of documentation. Like you said, it's a very comprehensive document they have to work through. With the lab director's guide to tell them how to set up the user profiles and all those other things. And then 6 months later, they come back to SCIEX and they want to pay an upgrade for us to be able to deliver that service for them, because they find out that it's so much more heavy in terms of time, especially if you're not familiar with the process. And for them to dedicate one of their resources internally to deliver on that validation service, it becomes time and cost prohibitive. So, a word of warning to anybody watching this video: the document only is available, and we'll always provide that to customers that want it. But really consider: do you have the expertise internally, and also do you have the time to dedicate to what is a very kind of time-consuming project if you're not familiar with the process? So that's the first point. The second point is as well, in terms of cost, something you didn't mention is the criminal element of it as well. So I know we've seen, not within SCIEX, but within the industry, we've seen incidents over the years where data might have been kind of tampered with or changed, and that's resulted in criminal proceedings and even prison sentences for some people. So the audit trail facilities within our software, when it's set up correctly, it is priceless, really, in terms of protecting organizations and personnel within organizations, so that any changes that are made to any data files are timestamped, date stamped, and also ID'd with digital signatures, so that it makes traceability of any changes really transparent. So again, I think that's another point that sometimes customers don't realize, not just the cost but the legal implications of data integrity.
Everything has to do with data integrity and proving when the data was acquired, when it was done, who did it. And that's what the auditor will want to see is, can you retrace the history of the data and obviously make sure that no one tried to falsify data. The one more thing I could mention on the services is, yes, you can do it by yourself. If you have an internal validation team that's experienced with writing protocols, writing IQ, QPQs, that might work for you. But the difference with us is you do get the full set of documents. You do get to review the entire package. Currently for SCIEX OS is around 300 plus pages. So you do have to review and approve the documents. And when we execute it, the first system will take 2 to 3 days, and then all subsequent system will take about a day each. So thinking about it is, you purchase our services, and once you review the documents, your system could be validated within a week or two, depending how many systems you have. So the speed element obviously is there. We've had engineers all around the world that are qualified to do software validation on your systems, and we can deliver it pretty quickly also.
And again, taking that a stage further, I know that from my own experience that the external audit companies and the regulatory bodies prefer customers to use external organizations for validation and compliance, because it removes that what's the word I'm looking for? It removes that conflict of interest. So if you're using an external organization, they've got no benefit to gain from things not being 100% perfect and accurate. Whereas sometimes when things are done internally, familiarity is sometimes, and it's not a deliberate act, but sometimes familiarity leads to something being missed. And when you look at compliance as a regulatory requirement, I know that they prefer external companies and organizations to take care of that part of it. It's not a mandatory requirement, but I know it is a preference. And also, one of the things that is really important, and I guess my next question is, in terms of the history of SCIEX compliance and validation services, we've never had a non-compliant situation with systems that we've validated and worked with. Is that still the case now, Patrick? I know it's a statement that we've used for quite a long time. Are we still in a situation where we can say to our customers that we've never had an audit non-compliance based on regulated, validated systems that SCIEX have taken care of?
Yeah, that's correct. Still to this day, as far as we know, we've never heard anyone coming back to us and say they found a non-compliance in our software validation. So that's something I think we can be proud of. And we always work with customers to improve our documents year after year, version to version. So we're always making sure that we're staying up to date with the latest regulation and that we can deliver the top service for all our customers.
And you mentioned it there as well. I think the other thing that we've always guaranteed with our customers is that if ever they are in a situation where an auditor picks up on something that the customer needs support with, our teams will always work with that customer and with the regulatory body to identify any related issues, but also to provide the data and the support to the customer to help them satisfy that requirement as well.
Yeah, we can definitely work with the customers if anything is found in the future, and that's why we work with them to review the current documents, and if they have any question or something that needs to be tweaked in the protocols, then we will work with them and offer a solution that will meet their requirements.
Okay, well, I think we're at the end of the questions part. So the only thing I've got left to ask really is, can you summarize what being audit ready means from a customer perspective? So kind of what is required for a customer to be audit ready, just in a summarized statement?
So this will include having your instrument qualified, having your software validated, having the procedures in place, meaning all your SOPs written and approved, and have all the your employees trained and ready to perform on our SCIEX instrumentation.
Excellent. Well, I'd like to thank you very much for the insightful conversation we've had. I'm sure customers all value that input. And what I'd like to say before we close out is that if any of our customers do have any software validation requirements or instrument qualification requirements, please reach out to your local SCIEX service representative, SCIEX service sales representative, whatever region you're in, and they'll be able to help you and connect you with the extended team. Patrick works out of our American organization in the Boston area, but the team have representatives throughout the global network, and we've got some really good contacts here in the EMEA region as well. So if there are any requirements for validation and qualification services, then please reach out and we'll support you the best we can. Thanks, Patrick, for your time, and I really appreciate it. And we'll catch up again soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.